it's very interesting what Bohr said. If you are doing research on quantum mechanics and you are not amazed by it, then you do not understand it. Are you amazed by quantum mechanics and your research? And why?
Yes, I'm still amazed by it. I'm still confused by it. It's a beautiful theory. Mathematically, it's very beautiful and very powerful, and it predicts so much of the universe. But when you try to understand why and how quantum mechanics works, then it becomes mysterious. And so that's why I love the theory, because there's still so much we need to try and understand. It still seems crazy sometimes.
Do you believe that there is a way that someday it will not look so mysterious for us?
We developed quantum mechanics in the 1920s, so it's been almost 100 years now, and many very, very clever people have tried to understand it and tried to explain it very logically, and have found it impossible. So I think it will always be strange, but we have several different ways of explaining it, several interpretations, and I think one day we will find the correct interpretation. Either there are parallel universes, or there's the quantum effects connect our universe instantly from one point to another, or there's some other strange explanation. At the moment we have several, and I hope one day we will find the correct one, but I'm still certain it will also be strange.
You introduce a new aspect of quantum mechanics, quantum biology. What is it, and what was your first initiative so as to make all those conclusions?
Well, quantum mechanics we've known since the beginning to explain so much of physics and chemistry. So without quantum mechanics, so much of modern physics and chemistry would not be explained. But until recently, biology has managed to escape any need for quantum mechanics. And part of that is because biology has been very successful. For the last 70, 80, 90 years, genetics and molecular biology have developed so much and so successfully they haven't needed quantum mechanics. I became interested when a colleague of mine, a molecular biologist at my university at Surrey in the UK, gave a seminar in the physics department. This is 20 years ago. And he suggested there may be a need for quantum mechanics to explain something in biology, a kind of mutation in bacteria. And most of my colleagues said he was crazy. And I thought, actually, he may be crazy, but this is an interesting question. So 20 years ago, my colleague and I both started to think about these ideas. And first of all, it was a hobby. So we would discuss this, not as serious research, but in Starbucks or having a beer or just, because it wasn't, my area is nuclear physics, his area is molecular genetics, and we have our own research in established traditional areas. But gradually, these questions about the role that quantum mechanics plays inside living cells have become more interesting. Experimental evidence has now appeared, so we began to take it more seriously. And then, his name is John Joe McFadden. He is the co-author of this book that has just been translated into Greek, Life on the Edge. We decided now is the time to get serious about quantum biology. In fact, we have to write the first book explaining quantum biology to the wider public.
This is your first book on
quantum. The first book on quantum. It's the only book so far in the world on quantum biology.
Doesn't it sound reasonable, since the laws of nature, the laws of the universe, are working with quantum mechanics rules? Isn't it logical that we are part of it?
In that sense, of course, and in that sense, and everyone would agree. So a chemist will tell you, of course, chemistry, when you go down to the level of atoms and molecules, they have to be subject to the laws of quantum mechanics. This is obvious. And chemistry, organic chemistry, if you increase the complexity, it becomes molecular biology, which becomes life. So of course we are made of atoms. Of course our bodies rely on chemistry. And of course down at the basic level, quantum mechanics must play a role. That's not what we mean by quantum biology. Quantum biology is ask the question whether the stranger aspects of quantum mechanics play a role inside living systems. So not just the rules of quantum mechanics to describe how atoms bond together, but quantum entanglement, quantum superposition, the idea that an atom can exist in two locations simultaneously, or two separate particles can somehow communicate with each other. These are very strange features of quantum mechanics that physicists and chemists have become, I guess, not happy with, but accustomed to. And we're now looking to see if they also play a role inside biological systems, and that's what's strange.
What are your first conclusions?
The first conclusions are that yes, there are certainly some kinds of mechanisms inside living systems that we can only explain using quantum mechanics. So there's the idea of quantum tunneling. The particle can jump from one position to another position instantaneously, almost like a ghost passing through a wall. You should not be able to see that in our world, but in the quantum world this happens. We are seeing this feature inside living systems. The way enzymes and proteins rearrange themselves uses quantum tunneling. So we're starting to see very clear evidence that quantum mechanics is playing a role. But there's a whole spectrum from very clear evidence to very speculative, almost crazy predictions. And we don't know which is true yet and which is wrong.
Could you analyze some of the most clear evidence?
The most clear evidence, I think, is where we see quantum tunneling of electrons and protons. For example, in the way enzymes work inside cells. There's also, my research has been looking at whether you see quantum tunneling in DNA, in the mutations of DNA. So if a proton can jump from in the double helix, from one strand of DNA to the other, they're connected together by what are called hydrogen bonds. So a proton can jump maybe from this side to this side, even if it doesn't have enough energy. So it's like, if you throw a ball at a high wall, usually you have to give enough energy for the ball to go over the wall. In the quantum world, you could throw the ball at the wall, and sometimes it disappears and appears on the other side.
Like a ghost.
Like a ghost. So we see this in physics and chemistry. It looks like this might be happening in DNA, the way DNA mutates, one of the possible ways that DNA mutates. So a very important mechanism if it's true. We're not sure yet. The other example is the way we smell. So typically we understand the sense of smell if the molecule of the scent enters your nose, and it has to have the correct shape to fit inside the receptor molecule. If it has the correct shape, that receptor sends a signal to your brain and says, I can smell oranges, I can smell flowers. But it's to do with the shape of the molecule. It's possible that it may not be the shape, it may be the vibrations of the molecules, between the molecules. And those vibrations, if they change, then a different receptor will capture this molecule. And it maybe there's a quantum explanation for these vibrations. So again, this is not definite. Many biologists don't agree with it, but it's a possibility that we have to investigate.
So if this someday will be proved, how this changes our knowledge about life itself?
There are two aspects. It may be not so surprising if we discover that we have to explain some mechanisms inside living systems using quantum mechanics. Okay, so life, when it evolved, it found some special tricks from the quantum world, and it used them because it gave life an advantage in evolution. But there may be another aspect, a deeper, more important aspect to it. It may be that life itself is special because of quantum mechanics. We know there's something magical about life, that a complex system that is living is different from a complex system that is not living. What is the difference between them? Maybe life is able to use the tricks of the quantum world in a very special way. So quantum mechanics is what is special about life, and that is a much more deep, important scientific and philosophical issue, and we're not sure yet.
Do you believe that those conclusions could affect also our philosophy, the way that people see the world around us?
I think those sorts of ideas will change our perception, but there are many aspects of science to do with life that will also maybe change our perception. For example, understanding the nature of consciousness, understanding the nature of, what is the difference between, what changes chemistry to biology? How did life begin is one of the big questions on Earth. How did these organic molecules arrange themselves in a very special way, maybe 3.7, 3.8 billion years ago, to become an object that is able to make a copy of itself? So how did chemistry become biology? We don't know. How do we think? How do we have free will? What is our sense of self? How will we develop artificial intelligence? There are many aspects about life that we don't understand that I think when we do will alter our perception of ourselves and our place in the universe. And then maybe quantum mechanics will have a big role to play.
Perhaps our observation of quantum mechanics rules around the universe, in space, in the stars, in Earth here, could help you have some answers on your exact studies on quantum biology?
It is possible, yes, because quantum mechanics is still a subject which we would like to understand more. So, for example, one of the big questions in physics is how do you connect quantum mechanics to Einstein's theory of relativity, general relativity, because Einstein's theory describes the universe at the very large, quantum mechanics describes the universe as the very small. How do they come together? So physicists are looking for this theory of everything, theory of quantum gravity. Maybe if we find such a theory, it will give us some deep understanding of quantum mechanics that will have an impact in quantum biology. And there are some very prominent physicists, for example, Roger Penrose, who worked with Stephen Hawking in the 70s and 80s on black holes. He has a theory that quantum mechanics plays a role in consciousness. And only by understanding quantum gravity can we understand consciousness. So there are some very, very big questions here. I think we're not at this point yet. I think we still have many more years yet before we can understand some of these questions.
You referred to Albert Einstein and Stephen Hawking. Those two are, I think, the most influential scientists on quantum mechanics and the theory of everything.
Yes.
I would like to hear your opinion on the theory of everything.
So of course I'm not Einstein and I'm not Stephen Hawking. I'm just another physicist. I change my mind. Sometimes I think we will never find a theory of everything because quantum mechanics will never, it speaks a different language to general relativity. So bringing them together is going to be impossible. So maybe we will always be looking, and there is never a connection, a unification of these two. But then of course there are other aspects, there are questions in the universe, for example, questions about the Big Bang, or what happens inside a black hole, where we do require both theories to work together. I don't know whether quantum mechanics needs to be changed, or general relativity needs to be changed, or both of them need to be changed. My view is that we are waiting for the next Einstein or Stephen Hawking to come and tell us something, and we will all say, of course, how could we be so naive, how could we be so dumb? But that may not happen for another 100 years. We have to keep trying, but I'm not sure how close we are yet.
Are you skeptical on those theories, for example, of the Big Bang, or what happens inside a black hole? Are you skeptical to what we already know?
No, I think what we already know is a very good approximation. So when Newton comes with his theory of a law of gravity, we teach that, we still teach it in school now. Then Einstein comes along and says Newton wasn't correct, this is the deeper understanding of gravity. That doesn't mean Newton was wrong, it just means Newton wasn't such a good approximation to the truth. Einstein gets us closer. There may be something that will supersede Einstein's general theory of relativity to get us closer. I think the truth, the way nature is something we will always try and reach. We may never reach it, but I think we will always get closer and closer. So maybe one day another Einstein needs to come along and tell us that our current understanding is not wrong, but it's a good approximation, but there's a better explanation.
apart from from science, you refer to consciousness, how quantum mechanics may affect our consciousness. What would you say to everyday people so as to understand quantum biology and how it affects consciousness, not on your scientific research, but in our everyday life?
I think we have to be careful because many people, if they know a little bit about quantum mechanics, they know it's very strange. But they then use it to try and explain more than they should. So they will say quantum mechanics explains spirituality, explains telepathy, explains alternative medicine, homeopathy, that's quantum mechanics. So anything that we don't understand or that they want to believe is true, they use quantum mechanics as an excuse to say, well, because quantum mechanics is strange, it could be. So I think it's words of caution to people that quantum mechanics is strange, but don't push it beyond its application. So even things like connection between quantum mechanics and consciousness, it's very exciting, very interesting idea. But the warning is just because quantum mechanics is mysterious and we don't understand it, and consciousness is mysterious and we don't understand it, does not necessarily mean that the two are connected in some deep way. They may be, but I think we're not at that stage yet. Quantum biology is still walking slowly. It's not running yet.
Yes. You refer to, for example, to telepathy. What is your opinion about it?
For me, telepathy falls in with lots of other areas of belief which people feel there's evidence for, but actually there is no scientific way at the moment that we could imagine it is possible. Telekinesis, the imagining moving an object with your mind. I'm a skeptic, so I'm not religious, so I'm not spiritual in that sense, and therefore I'm very solidly grounded in scientific reproducibility and scientific evidence. Telepathy, despite what many people say, there is no hard scientific evidence. So if people believe in telepathy, they need to provide the evidence. It's not the job of science to confirm or deny. It's the job of them to try and give us the evidence to persuade us. Quantum mechanics cannot explain telepathy. Even though quantum mechanics talks about entanglement and two separated particles that can communicate with each other, that doesn't mean that a particle in my brain can be entangled with a particle in your brain and allow us to communicate. Quantum mechanics doesn't work like that. So I would tend to be very skeptical about these ideas. It's very boring, yes. and people in parties sometimes when I tell them it's all, it can be quite depressing, but that's science.
I will insist on that. We have seen in your presentation your example with robins and how they find their direction around the Earth using, as you first introduced, quantum biology and those rules. Since a robin, based on those rules, on quantum biology rules, can communicate with from long distances, why not?
The robin can't communicate. No, what the robin is doing, and we have known this since the 1970s, it's able to sense the direction of the Earth's magnetic field. And many animals we now know can do this. So they have some inside their body somewhere, a compass, some way of telling their brains where is north, where is south, to fly in a certain direction. What we still don't understand is how does the robin do this? We think it's possible, if there's a quantum biology explanation, inside the bird's eye is a protein, and that protein has two electrons in it which are separated, still on the same molecule, but on different atoms in the molecule. And those two electrons will dance together, they will interact with each other, and that's quantum entanglement. And that will be very sensitive to the direction of the Earth's magnetic field. So it's the chemical mechanism inside the protein or in the bird's eye that is sensitive to the magnetic field. But the communication is all happening inside one molecule, not between the robin and something external. So telepathy can happen down at the level of molecules, but not between organisms.
This is what we know so far, of course.
Yes.
What else could someone learn for quantum biology by reading your new book?
Well, we start in the book with examples that we are very confident about. Examples where we see quantum effects in living cells that have very strong experimental evidence, like the work of enzymes, like photosynthesis, how plants use sunlight and transfer that energy inside to make chemical energy. Bacteria also use photosynthesis. So those are examples where there's a lot of research and a lot of good, solid science and many publications in journals. But in the book, gradually we get more speculative and less certain, all the way to quantum consciousness and possibly even a quantum origin to life. So life is very difficult to get started.
Is this a big question?
Very big. One of the biggest questions in science is, how did life begin? We don't know how it began. We know it began. We don't know if it happened anywhere else. We know it happened here on Earth. We're looking for possibility of life on other moons and planets elsewhere. But we don't know how chemistry became biology on Earth. Because some scientists will say it was a very unlikely event to arrange the molecules in such a special way to produce something, you know, the amino acids, they arrange themselves very carefully to make something that can be, to replicate, to copy itself. It may be that quantum mechanics gave life a shortcut, a quicker way of exploring different possible arrangements. In quantum mechanics, we know in the quantum world, an object can have many shapes simultaneously, many positions simultaneously, quantum superposition. This is what Schrödinger was trying to explain when he said the cat is in the box and it's dead and alive. He said, this is crazy, how can it be? But in the quantum world we see that. We see quantum cats, dead and alive, if they're just a few atoms. So these ideas are not crazy. We see them in the quantum world. What we don't understand is how can they happen inside a living cell? Did life begin before there were cells, when there was a complicated molecule? Did it have some advantage from the quantum world to get it started? And has life still been using quantum mechanics to give it an advantage? So those are very deep questions that I think science is still only just beginning to think about now. I'd like to think we will have an answer in my lifetime. It would be great if I helped to contribute to finding an answer, but we'll have to wait and see.
What are you researching on these times?
At the moment, my research is in two areas. So my traditional area of research is in nuclear physics. So I have a student I'm working with studying nuclear reactions in stars. So how the elements are made inside stars, the nuclear fusion reactions that go on inside our sun and other stars. So it's very mathematical modeling. But I have another research area in quantum biology. We're trying to understand how these very delicate quantum effects can last for a long time inside a living cell. A living cell is very hot, very noisy, very complex. And in physics, we see those things destroy quantum effects very, very quickly. If we're trying to look for quantum effects in a physics laboratory, we have to be very careful. We cool it down to near absolute zero. We do our experiments in a vacuum. We protect side environment, because any disturbance will kill the quantum effects. But somehow inside the living cell, when there's so much happening, thousands of chemical reactions, these quantum effects seem to last for a long time. So the research now is very mathematical. We're looking at the nature of noise. And when I say noise, I don't mean sound, I mean any interference. In general, we call it noise. How can noise cause quantum effects to survive for so long? So it's a very mathematical area, but it's a big question for us.
Are your students enthusiastic about researching on all those new and very modern fields?
Yes, I mean, not all students, the undergraduate students want to study physics because they want to go and pursue many other careers. They may want to go into journalism or IT or engineering or teaching. But those students who are interested in research, who want to do a PhD with me, yes, they're very enthusiastic and they find quantum biology very exciting. My problem is not the students. There are many students who are very clever and very enthusiastic. The problem is persuading the people who give us the funding, the research grants, to think seriously about quantum biology, because physics funders will fund physics and others who will fund biology, but they can't decide who should be giving money to quantum biology, because it's in between these subjects. It's a new area.
And what is happening? How do you tackle this?
We're talking to lots of people. We're telling them this is a very exciting field. It's very interesting. There are many questions. We're trying to get money from different groups. But I think we just need to talk more to those who control the budgets and tell them that this is an area that's very worth pursuing. It's been done before, so synthetic biology is a new area of research. The machinery and nanotechnology of biological systems looks like it will be very interesting and very exciting and has many millions of euros and pounds and dollars invested in it. We want to convince these people that quantum biology is also important and they should think about that as well.
Yeah. And your estimation about your future research, if you could predict what you will be researching exactly in 10 years from now?
10 years from now, I would like to think that quantum biology has become a much more respectable and permanent area of interdisciplinary research. That I, as a physicist, will be working with chemists, biologists, computer scientists, mathematicians. Quantum biology is one of these areas, like nanotechnology, like artificial intelligence, like research into climate, where you need many different areas of science to come together. So I hope in 10 years' time we would see quantum biology as a very serious interdisciplinary area of research and beginning to find more clever ways of testing these ideas. At the moment we have lots of theories and lots of possible explanations. The difficulty is how do you design an experiment that will check and confirm these ideas. It's not so easy. Biology is messy, biology is complicated. For me as a physicist, physics is easy. It's just equations and you solve it and it's fine. But try to get these subjects together and to talk a common language. That is a big challenge for us.
Thank you very much for our very interesting discussion.
My pleasure.
Yeah.